There's only one thing better than proving people right, and that's proving people wrong. And I've been doing that my whole life.
He's a good fighter, but I know my skills. I'm ready for this.
This is not for money. It's not to be famous. I want my name in those history books, and that's why I'm here.
He's an insecure person. That's why he has a lot of excuses.
November 6th, you will hear the words, and the new and still undefeated.
You're not on my level, and you will see.
Don't get paid. Welcome to The Debate, the show where I stand in the middle of the ring and talk to four people around the corners of the ring. Today, it's all about Saul Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant. November 6th, the MGM in Las Vegas. Where else? I'm joined at ringside, I guess, by a man that's been in the opposite corner to Canelo, Mark Tibbs, by a man who saw Canelo fight when he was about 15 or 16, Tris Dixon, the journalist, by a man who would like to fight Canelo, Zach Parker, and by BT's very own Carl Frampton. And I'm going to be throwing questions at them. They're going to be throwing questions at me. We're going to be talking about some of Caleb Plant's best fights. We're going to be talking about some of Canelo's best fights. The first question, fellas, is really simple. I'm going to throw to you first, Carl. What do we think about this fight, and what did you think when it was first announced?
I think it's a good fight. I think that when you talk about all the kind of super middleweights that could have given Canelo problems, I had Callum Smith, and he dealt with him. But I also had Plant and Benavidez, and he hasn't fought them yet. Plant's coming up. I think he could give him problems, but hard to see past Canelo winning the fight still.
That's not necessarily the best way to start the show because you've already given your prediction, but it's OK.
Oh, have I?
We'll continue.
So I'll start again?
We'll continue. This should be a game where Carl now gets to leave the table and come back at the end. Mark, you've been in the opposite corner. You've watched him, you've studied him in building up Billy Joe Saunders' profile, building up Billy Joe Saunders' confidence, and building up what you and Billy Joe Saunders was hoping was going to happen on the night. I'm not going to ask you what you thought of him during that fight, because I know that's going to be not good, because Billy was your man. But how do you prepare for a man like Canelo?
Well, you know, first things first, you got to see what you're working with. And Billy Joe Saunders was a skillful, brilliant mover, good boxer.
Shouldn't that be good against Canelo, Mark?
Absolutely,
on paper?
absolutely. Listen, look, to beat Canelo, you either got to punch as hard as him, be as strong as him. But if you're a brilliant boxer, you have to move. You have to try and own the outer centre, keep off the ropes the best you can, govern two directions, left and right, pivot off. And you've got to be a brilliant boxer. You've got to touch him more than he touches you, but you ain't got to engage too much. Plant is built like Zach here.
Tall and rangy.
Tall and rangy, tall and rangy, good mover. Difficult fight. Difficult fight. Listen, Canelo Alvarez is a difficult operator to come up against, and I do see him as you know, he's up there. He's the pound-for-pound great for sure.
Tris, what Mark was describing there was a great fighter, a guy that could do everything with a great chin. That's the way you beat him. You've seen him up close and personal, and also you've seen him from when he was a lot younger, when in theory he was slightly more vulnerable, when he had that loss to Floyd Mayweather, when he had that split decision against Erislandy Lara. You've seen him develop over the years. Can he be beaten? Not necessarily by Caleb Plant, but right now, can Canelo... Let's cut right to it. Can Canelo Alvarez be beaten right now?
It's looking very difficult, particularly around 160, 168. You'd have to look north to maybe Artur Beterbiev at 175 pounds.
Great light heavyweights, though.
And I think even then, some people might start him as favourite at 200 pounds, cruiserweight, against Breedis.
You'll be up at Bridgeweight in a second, Tris.
Well,
careful.
Let's not talk about that. But yeah, so I think the thing is, you know, Mark's touched upon it there. He's adapted and he's improved so much. And I was there that night. He looked so forlorn and dejected against Floyd Mayweather when he'd just been given an absolute boxing
lesson. Looked like a broken man, didn't he?
And you wouldn't have said this is going to be a generational talent there and then. But that's what he's gone on to become. And it just shows that obviously a loss doesn't have to be the be-all and end-all. He's learned so much from that. And you talk about the Lara fight as well, where it was close and he was pushed to the wire. Some say that that was contentious. But look how he's improved since then as well, and the different styles he's come up against: movers, tall guys, rangy guys, short, squat guys. He's moved up in weight. He's stopped light heavyweights. You know, he's done so much. He seems to have an antidote for almost everyone.
Anything that's put in front of him. I came to you last intentionally, Zach. You've heard Mark painting the picture about how you beat him and how good you got to be. You've heard Carl basically say as good as Plant is, it looks like it'll be him. You've heard Tris there talk about how he can adapt. He can find the counter to whatever you're doing. So how does Zach Parker beat him next year?
I think you just got to have a little bit of everything. You can't stay on the ropes for too long with him. That's where he wants you, want to be up close and that. So same with like Plant, he needs to be boxing move, but he needs to have that little bit of firepower to keep him off. You see with Golovkin, he was throwing in big shots with him, and that's what pushed him back. So yeah, I think you just got to have a little bit of everything and put it all together in one.
And of course, one of the things with that, and I'm going to pick up on that and I'm going to stick with you, is that you know what to do going in. You've got the ideas. You know, Joe Gallagher, the trainer, who's been in a couple of times with him, and other trainers that have been with him, and Mark's a good trainer, so you know what to do. It just seems to me, Zach, that, and I put this to you, and you can, if you agree or disagree, it's up to you. It seems to me that he makes you do what he wants you to do. Therefore, he's in charge. How do you counter that?
You just got to stick to your own game plan. You can't stray off the road. But yeah, I reckon it's going to be a great fight on November 6th with Plant and Canelo, and I think he'll give Canelo a lot of problems. He's got the style for it, and he's got the size for it as well. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Mark, has he got the style and the size for it? Because I could sense Zach, he wanted to answer.
No. Zach, you've touched on something that, you know, you're going to stick to your own game plan. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about everyone in general. See, that's where Canelo, he climbs into people's heads, yeah? Climbs into, because he's got so vastly experienced. And he manipulates you and controls you. And he gives little room in every area, including psychological area. So that's where, and that's why he is a great pound-for-pound fighter. So if you can be psychologically strong and hold it together, you've got the build, the length, the stature to outbox him and outfox him. I hope you do.
I think the proposition, though, Steve, like, as a fighter, that's one thing, coming up against the great Canelo Alvarez, but I would hate to be in Mark's boots or your trainer's boots and trying to come up with a game plan to beat this guy. How do you do it? I don't... It's a difficult one as a trainer to figure out.
And we've seen really good trainers, OK? We've seen a whole list of them, not just the British trainers that have been against him, but we've seen trainers, you know, some of the top American guys that have gone against him. And their plans have been in tatters. And they've looked, if you don't mind me saying so, maybe Tris will agree or disagree, they've looked as broken as their fighters sometimes, Tris.
Yeah, possibly.
And afterwards, I've seen them literally with their head in their hands because they can't work out what happened to their fighter.
I think possibly one of the biggest problems that Plant's going to have is some of the stuff that he does best plays into Canelo's hands, in the sense that he has that low left jab, that up jab that comes from the waist. And Canelo's such a big and fast puncher with the right hand over the top. You know, it's a real... There could be a lot of openings there for Canelo, and I think Plant sometimes got that style where he leans back as well. If you go back in a straight line against someone like Canelo, he's just going to swarm all over you. So some of the things that worked for Plant in the past, just I can't see them working against Canelo on fight night. Because I'm interested, maybe Mark won't comment on this, but in my opinion, Billy Joe Saunders is a smarter fighter than Caleb Plant. Doesn't mean he's more powerful, doesn't mean that he's more dangerous, but he's smarter. I would have Billy Joe as a smarter fighter than Caleb Plant. And Billy still fell into those traps. Billy still found himself in a situation where he was doing what the other man did. And that's the final shot. There's that moment when Billy has been tricked. He's been shown that shot and he's gone down. And you can literally, you can sort of sense Billy going, oh no, he's going to hit me with, and in it comes.
I think he's the most complete fighter there's been in a few generations. Like, if you talk about Floyd Mayweather beating him and stuff, even Floyd Mayweather isn't as complete a fighter as him, but that shot that he hit Billy Joe with, it's almost like he doesn't rely on his power, but he knows he's going to get you at some point. Seen him with Amir Khan, prime example, when Khan was giving him some issues with his speed.
Making him work.
Yeah, but he landed that shot, and it was like he just knew it was coming. He knew it was going to land at some point. It's
patience, isn't it? He's prepared to invest with 20, 30 feints or lefts to the body to line you up for that one right over the top. He knows that he's got 36 minutes to get to you and he's prepared to wait you out.
Or win over 36 minutes anyway.
Same
Exactly.
Kolyev fight as well. Kolyev was boxing good on his jab and his movement, but you just knew in the end he was going to catch. It was starting to walk him down, and you knew in the end he was going to start catching him.
I'm going to go round to the four of you. If there's a weakness, if there's a gap, if there's something that could be exploited, what might it be? I'll start with you, Tris.
When you look at the first Golovkin fight, he was again pushed to the wire in that, and you got someone there who is an extremely well-rounded guy who can bang, and basically you've got to be of that level, I think, to
Golovkin level.
Yeah, to hang with him. And you're talking of Golovkin from a few years ago, because I'm not saying that Golovkin, the Golovkin that we have now, would be a compelling fight for Canelo. You know, now where we're at, years down the line. But yeah, someone, and Mark alluded to earlier, someone who can really bang to get his respect, or else he'll just walk through you.
So, Mark, you said that. What else, Mark? Because let's take that as your first choice. Yeah. What's the second thing that would help your fighter on the night against Canelo as he is now?
Well, you've got to have someone who can punch as equally as hard as him.
And prepared to punch with him. Not be a...
Listen,
I'll put it, have you got to take a risk, Mark, against Canelo?
Well, you can only take a risk if you're armed with the artillery to take a risk, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's, I don't see anyone quite there to match him just yet. And as Zach pointed out earlier on, you know, he's getting older, and we've got to wait for that little bit decline. Get up there, Zach, you know what I mean, and seize your moment. But, you know, it's all about timing. It's all about timing. And like you say, Billy Joe Saunders, he's a great boxer, and his IQ is as equally as, I believe, as equally as good as Canelo's. Yeah. But, unfortunately, Billy made two mistakes, or the same mistake, he made it twice. He'd done it twice, 3 times, wallop, put the uppercut in. Canelo weren't even looking at him when he threw it, bang, sunk it in.
Your eyes closed. Zach, you've heard that. What have you seen or spotted, come on, you can tell us, that suggests to you, you know what, I can do something with that. I could work with that if I was walking out on November 6th at the MGM. Yeah,
obviously, the guys have said you need to earn his respect, and you need that little bit of punch power to keep him off. You've seen a lot of his latest fights, they ain't been going to the body much with him. In the Golovkin fights, he was going to the body and then coming up his head. So, yeah, you need to go to the body and slow him down from coming at you all these 12 rounds. So, yeah.
See, Zach, Steve, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not.
See, you ain't, if you ain't got the punch power, but you've got the slickness and the quickness, yeah? Slick and quick. You could confuse.
That's it, yeah.
It's about confusing him, see? You have to be very, very tricky and slicky to confuse Canelo, and if you can do that. So it's a mind game as well as a physical game. And so, yeah, so don't be going in there thinking, you know, you've got to go and have it off with him, you know what I mean? You know, if you know what I'm saying.
So, I think that's the last thing I want to do.
Stand with him, slick and tricky.
Don't be asking me for a third way to beat him, because they've tried to give you...
You've got to find the 6th way to beat him.
Yeah, I don't have it, and that's why I'm not a boxing trainer. But I really don't know. Obviously, you go back to the Golovkin fight, like Tris talked about. That was I suppose, the most recent fight where some people thought that Golovkin won. You go even further back to Mayweather and Lara, and they give him different sorts of problems. But I suppose there are 2 different ways. Movement was able to beat him then. Golovkin, you know, with a bit of brute force and, you know, a good boxing IQ as well, was close to beating him as well. But how do you do it now? Because here's another question. Is he still an improving fighter? Because 2 of his best wins, in my opinion, have been Billy Joe...
The last 10 months.
And Colin Smith.
Yeah. I don't think you can doubt... I don't think you can dispute that. And I have a theory about this, and I really don't care if you agree or not, any of you. But if there was any fighter in the world, any world champion, who in the last 10, 11 months... Forget anything before then. Forget the 18 or 19 former world champions or current world champions he beat or went the full 12 rounds with. If any fighter in the world had beaten Callum Smith and had beaten Billy Joe in that 10-month period, or the equivalent in any weight, we'd be talking about them as terrific, great fighters. But with Canelo, and this is what he does to you, is you then got to look at the rest of the portfolio. You've got to look at the rest of it. It's staggering. As I say, I don't want answers to that. That was just me talking because I'm allowed to. Now let's talk about Caleb Plant. Now, Tris, I'm going to start with you because as the journalist in the group, I need a bit of history, because it is crazy history, isn't it? Try and paint a picture for us of who Caleb Plant is.
Well, it's this crazy boxing world. It just keeps churning out these wonderful characters. Exactly. I mean, obviously, you know, people who would have seen the highlight reels most recently would have seen him and Canelo getting into it at the press conference. So you know that the guy's not afraid. But there is a good backstory here. So this is
a bad backstory, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Good, bad.
There's tragedy. There's, you know, there's hope. There's dreams. The whole lot. The whole mix. And you think, you know, before he fought Uzcategui for the title, he lost, tragically, a toddler who was 19 or 20 months old. And then, more recently, his mother got shot. There's just...
By the police?
By the police, yeah. It's one of those, it's another one of those crazy boxing backstories that you just couldn't make up. And he sort of, you know, when you look at the Uzcategui fight and his celebration where he was so tearful and emotional, you could see what it meant to him, obviously having lost his young daughter, and that he said he'd won the title in her memory. And I think, you know, now he sort of knows the story and he knows how to play the game. And this is a guy who now, say, in preparation for this fight, has enlisted the services to a degree of Andre Ward and Virgil Hunter. So he's played the game, or he's playing the game as well. So he knows the game. And obviously the press conference brawl's now being seen by millions upon millions of people worldwide. So he's got a legit story, but he also does know how to play the game. And that's great for the sport.
It is great for the sport. I'm going to ask you, Carl, about the Andre Ward involvement, him and Virgil Hunter working, I'm not quite sure what the terms is, working alongside or maybe just talking to Caleb Plant. Good decision, good choice?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you look at the list of opponents, kind of in the super middleweight division of the last 10 or so years, and guys that might have given problems, I mentioned earlier on, Callum Smith, Benavidez, Plant as one of them. Lara as well. But I think if you match a fight between Andre Ward in his prime and Canelo right now, Andre Ward is probably the favourite in that fight. So I think enlisting him and Virgil Hunter as well, the great trainer, I think it's been a masterstroke.
Yeah, if we go back to that previous question, what do you need to beat Canelo? Someone like Andre Ward would be the blueprint.
Yeah, in all fairness, yeah. In fact, all four of you missed that as an answer, so you don't get any bonus points.
You need an Andre Ward.
That was the obvious answer. You just need to be Andre Ward. Zach, let me ask you, I'm sure you watched the, as Tris said, millions have watched it. You watched that face-to-face, that head-to-head at the sort of opening announcement press conference about 6 weeks ago, or 5 weeks ago. What did you think when you watched it? What was your first reaction once you saw it?
Yeah, obviously it's a bit different side of Canelo, what we've seen before. It looks like Caleb Plant has got under his skin a bit, and you don't really see that. He's usually cool, calm, collected, Canelo is. So yeah, it's a bit of a different side, and it shows it's actually got a couple of emotions, and yeah, it's good. It's making the fight even bigger than what it was anyway. Were
you surprised that they both? I know they were throwing slaps. They still slaps from two good fighters. So you know, let's not joke about it. But were you surprised they actually were throwing shots like that?
No, when he pushed him, when he started walking back up to him, Caleb Plant, I knew he was going to come round with something. You're not just going to walk up to someone, someone's just pushed you and not do anything about it. So yeah, once it got a bit heated in that, and I knew it was going to kick off him. So yeah.
I'm surprised how well he slipped it in a pair of chinos and a tight
I was going to say, what was the shot he slipped?
No, but the thing is, sorry, Mark, I'm going to come to you, but the thing is...
You've seen with the glass, he chucks the glasses back and then you see...
You know, but no, there's another thing. Carl and I looked, I was talking to Carl earlier on, we're having a coffee. Yeah. And he does another thing. Caleb Plant comes to him like this, yeah?
Yeah.
And then when he does the push, Canelo's standing like this. Yeah. Have a look at it. By the time Plant comes back, he's turned himself completely around.
Well,
ready. Go on, Marky.
Steve, what I saw, see, Caleb Plant, listen, they're two experienced guys, and they know how to play the game, like you said, Trish, yeah? But what it was, as I looked at it, Caleb Plant pumped his chest out, yeah?
Stood up tall.
Stood up tall, but they're fighters, we're fighters, and we work on, without being, like, aware of it, we pick up on body language and things like that, see? So Caleb's looking down at him, he's sticking his chest out, he's looking down at me, and I felt that mental battle going on.
Sense the energy.
Yeah. And Canelo's a gentleman, yeah, until someone is being imposing in his space. And it was just a millimetre too much. And he done the right thing, Canelo, checked him. Like I say, he checked him. Because, you know, the little battles are battles. in the big fight as well. So the little battles on the journey, the meetings, this head-to-head.
Mental games.
Yeah, this is
And physical games.
That was 1-0 to me for Canelo.
Yeah.
And he tried to swipe me and he caught it, didn't he? Did he catch it? Canelo?
Caught him.
Yeah.
I think he caught his
So do you
eye as
understand
well,
what I'm saying? What I'm saying is he physically checks them early in the battle.
Then he pushes them.
No. I mean, in fights, Canelo. And he mentally checked him.
That would definitely be
he
in
mentally
Sella
checked
Plant's
him.
head.
Does that make sense?
That would definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Now, Marky, I want to ask you, because the build-up to Billy Joe and Canelo was quite lively. Eddie Reneso, the trainer, was talking about this time it's personal. It's never been personal.
Yeah.
Billy Joe has made it personal. And there was quite a few, not scuffles, but quite a bit of toing and froing in hotel lobbies with people shouting, and Canelo bursted into his brilliant swearing. That his British swearing, his English swearing's legendary. At that point, Mark, I'm assuming you were around some of that and you saw him at the weigh and you saw him at the head-to-head. Could you sense anything from Canelo at that point? So you're the inside man here. You're the one that's that close.
Steve, listen, look, that stuff that happened in the hotel, I wasn't around. I knew it was going on, but you know, it wasn't a bit of me.
Yeah.
I mean, because
I know that. I
me,
appreciate that.
Billy Joe, and we was all in our hotel doing what we got to do, focusing on the fight. But Billy Joe Saunders is a wind-up. He's normally the governor at climbing in people's heads, and I suppose he tried then.
Now, you mentioned there that it will be in Plant's head. I know this is to you, then you can answer as well, Carl. Will it be in his head in a good way, or do you think it'll be in his head in a bad way, Zach?
Well, it could be both ways. Like, it could.
You're a diplomat. You might want to stop boxing and go into diplomacy.
It could be in a bad way because you see him. See how quick Canelo was, and he caught him straight away. You seen it coming like that, but it could be in a good way as well by saying, right, now you've got me once, I'm coming back at you. So we'll just have to wait and see on the fight night.
What about you, Carl?
I think in the immediate aftermath, Plant is probably a bit embarrassed because he's been pushed and he's went for the slap, which he's missed, and he's been hit 2 other slaps. So I think he's probably been initially embarrassed. But I think with the whole backstory, and I've been around him as well, so I've been around him, training beside him in the gym. He's confident, he's arrogant.
But good arrogance.
Yeah, but a good arrogance. And I think he'll be backing himself in this fight. I don't think he'll have any fear going in here, even though he's got a mountainous task in front of him in Canelo Alvarez. But I think he's full of confidence, this kid. I really do.
That's what makes this fight very interesting. So for you to tell me, I know you're speaking from the art. So he's confident, he's brash and fancies it. I think this could be the undoing of him, if you know what I'm saying.
See, the first time I saw him was in Las Vegas. I was getting ready for Santa Cruz, and he came in with Luis de Cubas Jr. to spar George Groves. And Groves was out of shape, a little bit heavy at the time, but he was just starting off at camp. And we've got this kid, Caleb Plant, coming in. No one's really heard of him. And we're thinking, George, like he does in most people, he's going to do a number on this guy. But it was a good spar.
Yeah.
And I remember saying afterwards, the Shane McGuigan and stuff, that kid is very, very good. And that was, I think he might have had 4 or 5 fights at a time here. Now he's
at the most 10.
now he's a completely different fighter, but he was full of confidence coming into the gym. But afterwards, he's a nice guy, but he's just got this kind of persona, and he's trying to build a reputation and a persona for the public, I think.
And let me ask you this, Tris, on the last bit of Caleb Plant. I'm sure you've seen it. You've seen the viral footage of him having street fights, those crazy street fights. That's part of him as well. I don't know if you've seen the one where the guy pulls a knife on him and he's sort of jabbing the guy's head. It's an unbelievable, clip. If you've not seen it, he's boxing. You've not seen it. He's boxing the guys. He's having a fight, and it's on sort of what they call state housing in America, so like a council estate. And he's up against this big guy. He's a big old lump, and the guy's a bit slow. And so Caleb's jabbing him and moving. This is like 10 years ago.
No gloves?
No, it's proper street fight. Trainers on and shirts. They've had some sort of altercation over whatever, a girl or a car or a dog. I don't know what it is. Who knows? T-shirt, pair of socks, who cares? But having this altercation, and Caleb's jabbing him. Doesn't want to let his right hand go. He's hitting him with jabs, and he's marking this guy up, and he's bashing this guy up. And he's asking the guy, no, do you want to quit? Please, can we stop now? Can we stop now? If suddenly the guy pulls out a knife, so Caleb has to run. And there's this voice as he's running saying, see, you're running now, even though he bashed the guy up. That's part of where this guy's from. Now, I'm going to go around the 4 of you. Do you think that, considering that type of history, That type of history he's had, rough old history.
Yeah.
Mum being shot by the police when she pulls a knife on the police, losing that daughter, you know, being basically stuck in a dead-end life is what he says. Is that going to help him, Tris, against Canelo, or does it not matter?
To a degree. I mean, I think a lot of fighters come from trauma or traumatic backgrounds, and obviously that's, you know, one thing you can say about Plant being brought up in Nashville, it's not a boxing hotbed. This isn't a guy that's had the New York Golden Gloves, that's probably been in favour with the US Olympic teams and all the rest of it. It's not boxing 101.
It's a backwater. Boxing backwater.
Exactly. So, I mean, he's had to get it, his action in any way, shape or form. And obviously, when you look at trauma, yeah, that sort of stuff can easily drive someone. You can see, obviously, when he talks about the death of his infant, how it drove him. Now, obviously, motivated by the death of his mother and her memory and all the rest of it. All that stuff is stuff, as Rocky Balboa would say, is in the basement, isn't it? So when you're digging deep and you need to be motivated, sometimes that's the sort of thing that will come to you and give you that bit of extra strength. I'm not saying it will get him over the line against Canelo, but when the going gets tough, you need something to help push you over the line, and sometimes that kind of trauma can help.
Carl, that kind of backstory, that kind of fearlessness, the fact that, as you say, and I think you're absolutely spot on, I think the sunglasses breaking, being slapped, missing with a punch, I think that embarrassed him. Is that going to be a good thing in Vegas, or is he going to allow that to rule his heart and head?
Yeah, well, I think, is there a difference between being fearless and being brave? You'll have to be brave, being stupid as well, because there's time. I don't think you can trade with Canelo. I don't think you can stand and have it out. If you're Caleb Plant anyway, someone like Golovkin with his punching power could maybe do it. But I think he needs to be really smart and focused and switched on. And I think going back to the earlier point of Andre Ward and Virgil Hunter, I think it's been an absolute masterstroke to bring him in. So I think they'll be drilling it into his head. Do not stand and trade with this guy, because if he does, I think then that's a problem for him.
So he can't allow himself to get sucked in to Canelo's fight. Easier said than done, Zach, obviously.
Yeah, like you said about his childhood, hard upbringing is going to bring out a lot of character in him. And, yeah, it's going to make him a stronger person in the end. And, yeah, obviously, like you just said, you can't stand and trade with Canelo. No one can. You got to box smart and hit when you want to hit, not when Canelo wants to hit.
Now, we've talked about various things. What I want to do now, if I can, is try and place Canelo historically, where he sits at the moment in pound for pound and where he might be going back a few years, and also, with particular attention to Zach, the other super middles, or light heavies, or middles, or even light middles that might move up and fight, or cruisers, or bridger weights, Tris, whoever might be the fights on the horizon. So I'll start with you, Carl. Pound for pound, right now, no matter how you do it, where is Canelo in the boxing pound for pound?
I think he's number one. I don't really think it's an argument. I think he's number one pound for pound. There's a few guys kind of in behind him, fighting it out for second, third, and fourth, and
scrapping it for second.
Yeah, but I think that you have to have him as the top dog.
I'm going to ask to all of you, if you like, when you look at the pound for pound, obviously it's not a belt and it's something that's about opinion in most ways. Do you do it over the last 12 months, or do you take into consideration the previous year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? What do you do?
It's the whole body of work. You can't really do it based on potential or last fight, really, unless sometimes you get a Teofimo Lopez who beats a Vasyl Lomachenko and then sort of...
Does he inherit all of Lomachenko's stuff?
Exactly. It's a tough one, isn't it? I think in terms of what Carl's saying, I agree. I have Canelo at number one, but it becomes interesting if Usyk beats a Fury and unifies at heavyweight.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also, if Crawford gets his defining fights, because Crawford is, probably those, I would say those three are probably maybe above Inouye and Teofimo Lopez. I'd say those three, Crawford, Usyk and Canelo.
But with Canelo just slightly out in front?
Yes, and I think it's interesting, when you talk about historically as well, I remember Canelo was wheeled out to the British press. It was only a handful of us there, probably about 2009, before he was Canelo. It was when he was this young Mexican ginger kid.
He was just Saul.
Yeah, exactly.
Baby.
I remember there was maybe 3 or 4 of us there, and Oscar brought him down to meet us and said, this is the new guy, this is going to be, when Floyd retires. There was no speculation about Floyd fighting Canelo back then. But I remember Oscar was saying, this is the guy. He's a cross between me and Chavez. He's sort of got my good looks and fan base, and he fights like Chavez. I think historically now, this might be controversial, it might not. I think he's gone above Oscar, and he's behind Chavez in terms of the Mexican greats. And that is not a bad space to be in.
No, that's the space he's quite happy with that, certainly with regards to Chavez, who he seems to adore. Is he number one at the moment or in the last year? And how do you judge, say, pound for pound or the best fighter? Is it the last year with you, Mark, or is it like Tris has put in an argument, you know, looking at the whole body of his work?
Yeah, well, to be fair, pound for pound's always confused me a little bit because
And me.
Yeah, I admire fighters, you know, great fighters, from Chavez to Sugar Ray Leonard to Tommy Hearns, you know, they was all great to me, but all different styles.
Yeah.
And Roberto Duran, I loved him. But we're talking about now, obviously, Canelo Alvarez is there for me. Usyk just under, but then Tyson Fury. Now, I believe if Tyson Fury ever fights Usyk, he's going to be the governor because of his size. And he beats Usyk, so therefore Tyson Fury would be pound for pound.
This is just one of those wild, crazy debates where you balance up a Tyson Fury beats Wilder in 11 rounds, Tyson Fury beats Usyk on points. Is that better than Canelo beating Callum Smith, Canelo stopping Billy Joe, and Canelo beating Plant? I love the idea of that. Zach, where are you on this one?
Yeah, obviously.
You're the active fighter.
That's it. Obviously, I have Canelo top dog, just because what he's done in his career. He's boxed so many champions in the past and been around for God knows how long now. You see, I've got like a couple of good lads behind him. I've got Terence Crawford, Fury, obviously Usyk. But yeah, I've got Canelo at top just because he's been around for such a long time. And he's been boxing champion after champion after champion. Yeah, but it's obviously his second, third is quite close between Crawford and Tyson Fury for me.
Carl, we're not going to see going forward, you know, if I'm around, I hope I am in 10 years' time, and we're on this ring, all four of us, same four. Zach's had a great run as a world champion. You're the #1 pundit in the world. Tris can't stop selling books. And Mark's working all around the world as a top trainer, and I'm just an old geezer who's bald in the middle of the ring. If we're here in 10 years' time, okay, and I really mean this, will we look back on the Canelo days when fighters had over 50 fights? And will that be completely rare? Will the days of fighters being top fighters and having 50 fights be gone?
Yeah, I don't think most of the top fighters aren't going to have 50-plus fights. You look at even guys like Josh Taylor at the minute. Yeah. He's literally had a handful of fights, about 16 fights, something like that.
He can't have 35 more, can he?
No, he'll not. Josh will probably finish his career inside another 10 fights.
But like you said, I mean, Canelo had 20, 25 under the radar.
21 before he was 18.
Exactly.
And he started when he was 15,
whereas
16.
some people, you know, whereas a lot of big names coming out of the amateurs now, so that's 200 fights behind.
So is there an asterisk attached to Canelo because of that, that piece of history?
You could do, I mean, but then obviously it's not necessarily advantageous to start at 15. So it's not like he hasn't paid his dues at the same time.
No, listen, that's a decent debate.
Exactly,
Where are you on that one, Mark? Because at 15, you're the best 57-kilo boy in the country. I know, because I ranked you at #1 in Boxing News all those years ago when you were 15. Yeah. How do you stand on the idea, you know, that part of his history? All those, I think it's 21 fights by the time he's 18, including 10 and 12 rounders. How do you stand on that junior part of his career?
Well, it's very unusual.
Yeah.
It's very, very unusual, but that's what... he had good people around him, guiding him, putting him through and matching him. So that's what it takes. It takes you know, you've got to have a team behind you, and he's obviously had a great team behind him, but that's why, you know, and he's turned into a pound
You can't just chuck him into the Lions Den when he's 15.
No, he was fighting.
You have to guide him.
To be fair, when we saw him at 15 years old, 16, 17-year-olds, the way he dealt with men, the way he dealt with men in good fashion, he had fight in him, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
But he was still brought along.
You could make a case for your Conor Benns and your Campbell Hattons to be brought up in a similar way. 20, if they haven't had an extensive amateur career, they have 20 fights under the radar.
That's a really good point.
Same with Devin Haney. He went down to Mexico when he was like 17 and
so
had a load of fights. And now look at him now. He's at the top now, waiting to fight Teofimo. So yeah, but then sometimes it's good for...
The flip to that argument is look at what all the Eastern Bloc fighters are doing now, and they're having these great amateur careers, and then they're firing them in for Kazakhs and stuff for world titles and say 10 fights. You've got a lot coming from them Eastern Bloc countries now. So.
I mean, yeah, you got guys like Vozdich, retired after 20 fights, world champion, done his damage and left.
Well, you know, we got champion, you know, the Baturbiev and the Bivels and guys like that. They're not going to have 25 more fights, 20 more fights. I mean, they're just not going to have it. That's a good debate, but we're actually doing, if you don't mind, we're doing Canelo today. Well, if that's all right, fellas. It's a nice idea. Who's out there, Zach, apart from yourself, who's out there in any of the divisions that next year poses not just a threat, but is a big fight for Canelo, other than yourself, obviously?
Obviously, you got the likes of like Benavidez. He's a former super middleweight world champion.
And a big boy.
And yeah, he's a big lad. Obviously, he's not made weight a couple of times because he's that big. But yeah, I think it could cause Canelo a lot of problems and is a force to be reckoned with in the super middleweight division. So.
What about you, Marky? Who's out there?
I agree with Zach Benavidez. He's 24-year-old.
Baby, isn't he?
Yeah, I still think he's got to wait a little bit longer. But he's a threat out there. You've got Zach Parker, of course, and what's his name? John Ryder. I feel he deserves a chance. Yeah. Canelo, and strong fighter. But yeah, Benavidez, one to watch.
Tris, what about you? Because I know that you're thinking out of the box slightly.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, when you look at how good he is, you want to see him maybe beat Benavidez and clear up any arguments at super middle. And then I think you've got these great fights at 175, which if he fancies them, Beterbiev and Bivol. And then I think the one for me, which is going to be a bit like his Sugar Ray Robinson, Joey Maxim fight, would be Maris Bradis up at cruiserweight, 200 pounds.
If you can pull him down 5 pounds.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Catch weight, 192 or something like that.
Sugar Ray level. Pull him down, struggle him.
And I think, you know, when you think Canelo weighed in, I think 4 or 5 weeks ahead of the Plant fight at 175, 177. So he's probably come down from 190, 185 maybe.
Yeah, so he can do it.
So I don't think that's an impossible task. And to say he's won every belt up to cruiserweight, because let's face it, he's not going to fight the heavyweights. He's not going to get to the 250-pound giants. And so I think to crown off as cruiserweight, that would be almost like the Roy Jones, John Ruiz fight.
Yeah.
You know, shades of that. As in not fighting the best, but still getting one of those belts, which means an awful lot historically.
Well, you know, Maris is a good fighter.
Well, and also, let's say Bradis is the #1 at cruiserweight. John Ruiz wasn't the #1 at heavyweight.
That's absolutely the truth. With John Ruiz, I love John Ruiz. The fan club, the John Ruiz fan club should be bigger than it is. Carl, what about you? Because the correct answer for the purposes of this show is the Caleb Plant rematch after he beats him on November the 6th. But other than that, who's out there?
Yeah, I don't think he does beat him, but I think he gives him problems. But I think Benavidez certainly gives him problems too. Young, hungry guy, can box, but he's got the dynamite and he can really punch as well. I like the thought of a Beterbiev fight. I think that might be a stretch too far, but interesting one. I never really thought about Bradis until Tris just mentioned it. And why not if I'm thinking about Beterbiev? But Bradis is a cruiserweight who I would favour Canelo in a fight against him.
He gave Thingy problems, Usyk problems though, didn't he? So.
He did, yeah, for a proper fight, mind you, it's in his hometown. Yeah. So that's why I like, that's lateral thinking. I completely agree with that. Well, I tell you what, now it comes down to who's going to do what on the night. Before we do that, I've got to ask you, Mark, you know, you've been there. Thousands of people, Billy Joe Saunders ready, Canelo ready in the opposite side of the ring, where he suddenly looks enormous. His back seems to open up like he's got a set of wings. I've seen him. He just changed his shape between the weigh-in and fight night. But is there... I'm not going to choose my word carefully here. Is there some kind of aura around him? You know, do you sense him? Do you realise he's there before you've turned around and clocked him?
To be very honest with you, I can't say, with all respect, you know, it's just something that we do, and...
He's just another fighter?
Just another fighter. But I've met Canelo a couple of occasions now, and he's a lovely, lovely guy. And I've met him in Saudi Arabia very briefly. He's as big as me, but shorter than me. So, but when I met him out in Dallas, when Billy fought him, obviously he blew up and got big, and they had that aura about him. But no, you know, we get prepped as trainers as well. We get built up for the fight as well, and you know, we don't let that get the better of us. So that's all I can say.
I love it. Well, I was talking to Mark earlier. You'll love this, Carl. You'll understand this. I was saying to Mark earlier, I said, Mark, when you're in the corner and you're looking up, how good is he? He went, well, let me stop you there. He said, I'm watching my man. I don't care about the other man. I said, yeah, but he must be good to watch from the corner. No, trust me, I ain't talking about how good he is against my man. Mark, he was absolutely straight with me on that one.
No, because you do. You've got your own game plan. We've got to do what we've got to do to get the result and to get through. Yeah, right, Cole?
Yeah, you're right.
And the thing is, we love what we do, and we have to get our man over the line. That's the job in hand. So, you know...
That's all you're bothered about, getting your man
You've got
across
to
the
think about number one, haven't you? And that's
Yeah.
his fighter. And if you're not thinking about him and think about the other one, then it plays into their hands, doesn't it? So.
You're thinking about the wrong man.
Yeah.
OK, so Zach, I'll ask you first. What happens when that first bell sounds? You can be as specific or as vague as you like, son. What happens? First bell sounds, ding, ding, bosh, start.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great fight. I think Cellar Plant's going to cause him a lot of problems, especially early. Like 1 to 6, that's when he'll get his rounds up. And it's just whether he can stand up to Canelo's punches in the end, because that's when I think Canelo's going to come on stronger in the later of the fight. But yeah, obviously Cellar Plant's chin's never been tested like against the Canelo power. So yeah, it's going to be a good fight, but I'm going to pick Canelo to win, maybe late stoppage.
Tris, how you seeing it?
Yeah, similar to Zach. I'd like to see Plant come out, and I'd like to see him have a sort of stubborn and fixed game plan to work the body and to take some time to invest in trying to slow Canelo down. That could be a little bit disheartening, because I don't think you're going to get rid of Canelo or put a dent in him with 2 or 3 body shots. It's going to have to be
and not in 2 or 3 rounds either.
Exactly. It's going to have to be something where, you know, you're going to have to set your stall out and invest a couple of shots here and there when you can. The thing is, obviously, Canelo has just become so well-rounded that he doesn't fall for anyone's long-term tactics. And he's,
seen it all.
like Mark said, he's worried about what he's going to do. I suppose to a degree, in some ways, it's the opposite, because he's there figuring you out. Every fight he's had, you can see his mind thinking, this isn't just like a blunt force object who's going to come and get you. This is a guy who's a master strategist, who's prepared to invest in, whether it's his own body attack, whether it's feinting a certain shot to try and unlock other shots. So the question I have, which I just don't know, is how Plant is going to deal with him. Because obviously I don't think he's going to run, because you can't afford to just run against Canelo, because he'll get you in the end. And probably if you run against Canelo, you're not going to get a decision in Vegas. And he's not going to stand and trade with him. So obviously he's going to have to pick his moments. It's not going to be a one-dimensional approach. He's going to have to pick his moments. He's going to have to invest to the body. And he's going to have to try and earn his respect. I think if he ticks those boxes, he's going to give himself the best opportunity. But it's very hard to see.
Big boxes to tick,
I'm not sure that Plant is any better than Callum Smith, or if he's much better than Billy Joe Saunders.
No. Marky, how do you see it playing out? How do you see it once that first bell sounds?
Well, I see Plants circling him, the outer centre, keep himself off the ropes the best he can, change direction, keep him long as he can. I don't believe that, to be fair, get straight to the point, I don't see it going more than 6 rounds.
Wow.
Yes.
Carl, it's on you. Now, one other thing we haven't mentioned here, we've done a whole show, we haven't mentioned some of that stuff that Caleb Plant used to do when he first turned pro. Some of that laughing and joking and sort of flippant stuff, the blowing kisses, you know, the sort of funny dance moves, holding his hands behind his back. A little bit of Tyson Fury, if you like. Do you see any of that coming in those early rounds?
If he's far enough out of distance, maybe. It's all right doing it against the guys that Caleb Plant's fighting at the start of his career, but Canelo's a completely different proposition, and I think that, I suppose, a way to maybe try and frustrate Canelo, it could be a tactic in the fight, but I've never really seen him frustrated before.
Hard to get under his skin.
I think it is, and I see it to be, for a few rounds, Plant will give him a few issues. Yeah. I think that he'll cause a few problems. I think that Andre Ward, although I love him, has made a ludicrous statement saying that
stoppage.
Yeah, he's going to stop him. I just don't think he can be stopped. I genuinely don't believe he can be stopped.
And if he gets stopped on a cut, that doesn't count.
It's a different story. You know, if you can't be hit with Golovkin's best shots and walk through them without flinching, then Caleb Plant isn't going to stop you. But I think he'll give him issues, and I think he might stop him late. I think that the Canelo could stop him very late.
I think it's important to say that this is a good fight. I mean, we're watching greatness.
Yeah.
We're watching greatness with Canelo, and we want him to fight the best. And he is fighting arguably the best 168-pounder.
Third time in 4 fights.
Exactly. So, and you know, there's a lot of people that are excited about this fight, particularly stateside.
I'm excited about this fight.
They haven't had, you know, because of the British interest in the heavyweight division, they haven't had obviously the Joshua Usyk fight. Yes, they had Wilder Fury 3. But there's been massive interest about this fight in the USA. And I think it is a great fight. It's just when you're weighing up a good fighter against a great fighter, it's hard to really make a case for the good fighter.
Or in fact, a very good fighter against a great fighter.
Flank's character makes it a good fight, an exciting fight, and he's back.
I agree. I mean, I like all the Khaled backstory. Yeah. I like the face-to-face. I like some of the unknowns that are there. Listen, it's a terrific fight. It's a great fight. Carl, it's been a pleasure having you ringside tonight. Zach, it's been a pleasure. I hope you get the fight next year. I hope we're talking about you, 4 people around this ring. Marky, always a pleasure. Tris, an absolute delight. Well, that was the debate. Canelo Alvarez against Caleb Plant. Las Vegas, the end of what will be a crazy week. Now, it's live and exclusive on BT Sport Box Office. More than that, it's just a fight that boxing needs. Thanks for being with us.